Hello, weary traveler. If you've joined us before, welcome back to our quiet corner of history. And if you renew, welcome to tonight's soothing tales from centuries past. As always, before we drift away, I'd love to know where in the world you listening from and what time it is for you right now. Feel free to share in the comments. It's always a pleasure to imagine our nocturnal historians tuning in from across the globe. And if you find solace in this kind of soft, educational storytelling, please consider subscribing so you don't miss future episodes. Tonight, we're going to embark on a gentle journey back in time to one of the mightiest and most enduring empires the world has ever known, the Ottoman Empire. Imagine a realm spanning over 600 years, from the 14th to the early 20th centuries, and at its zenith, stretching across 3 continents, from the formidable gates of Vienna to the distant Persian Gulf, and across the vast expanse of North Africa. This Turkish Muslim dynasty left an indelible mark on the lands it conquered and the millions of subjects under its vast rule. But here's the thing about grand empires: while they often shimmer with tales of opulence and power, life for the common people was often far from easy. From the gilded palaces of Istanbul to the sun-baked villages of Arabia and the war-torn frontiers with Europe, hardship and brutality were, for many, ever-present realities. Tonight, we'll gently explore the many challenges, geographic, economic, political, religious, and social, that made life a struggle for so many during this fascinating period. So, get settled in, perhaps with a warm cup of tea, or simply let the gentle murmur of my voice guide you. Close your eyes and let your imagination wander back to a time of sultans and EMS, of vast trade networks and clashing civilizations, of piety and persecution, all under the banner of the Crescent and Star. Chapter 1. The Crescent rises. The shadows lengthen. The Ottoman Empire first emerged in the 1300s, rising from the ashes of the once mighty Seljuk Empire in Anatolia, founded by Osman I, after whom the empire was named. This fledgling state began as just one of many small principalities vying for power in the region. But through a remarkable combination of shrewd diplomacy, well-timed conquests, and the fortunate weakness of their neighbors, the Ottomans quickly expanded their territory and influence. Key early victories included the Battle of Kosovo in 1389, which subjugated much of the Balkans, and the pivotal Battle of Varna in 1444, where a crusading army of Hungarian and Polish forces was decisively defeated. Yet, it was the conquest of the fab-led city of Constantinople in 1453 by Mehmed II that truly heralded the Ottomans' arrival as a major power. Rechristened Istanbul, the city became the flourishing capital of an empire that would dominate the Islamic world for centuries to come. Chapter 2. The Golden Age. Gilded Cage. Life under Suleiman the Magnificent. Under his reign, Ottoman armies pushed deep into Central Europe, conquering Belgrade and most of Hungary to the east. They captured Baghdad and exercised profound control over the holy cities of Mecca and Medina. Ottoman naval supremacy extended across the Mediterranean, and as Red Barbary corsairs, allied with the empire, terrorized European shipping lanes. The courtly household of Suleiman was legendary for its grandeur, its pursuit of learning, and its sheer opulence. Gifted artists and architects including the famed Janissary, were commissioned to decorate the top copy palace with brilliant tilework, plush carpets, ornate calligraphy, and shimmering precious stones. Exotic animals pro-walled the palace gardens, adding to the sense of faraway grandeur. Hundreds of concubines and eunuchs resided in the labyrinthine harem, with the valid sultan the queen mother, often wielding immense power behind the scenes, a true force to be reckoned with. But all this splendor often belied the harsh realities of daily life for the sultan's subjects. For while Suleiman and his court enjoyed unimaginable wealth and luxury, the vast majority of people in the empire lived in grinding poverty and hardship. It was an area of stark contrasts, glittering opulence, existing side by side with profound destitution. This fundamental disparity was perhaps the most defining feature of life under the Ottoman crescent and star. Chapter 3. The weight of the Sultan's hand, oppression and injustice. Perhaps the most universally felt burden for Ottoman subjects was the heavy, often arbitrary hand of the Sultan and his officials in the Ottoman Empire. The Sultan was an absolute ruler whose word was law, his authority nearly divine, styling himself as both a temporal ruler and a spiritual leader. The Caliph of the Islamic world, he demanded complete and unquestioning obedience from his subjects. For the common people, this often translated into stark oppression and exploitation. Laws were harsh and punishments severe, designed to instill fear and maintain order. Petty crimes like the FT could result in Aham being cut off. A stark warning, apostasy, and heresy were punishable by death, reflecting the state's rigid religious control. Taxes were notorious lie high, and collected morsels sly, often by tax farmers who squeezed peasants for every last coin, caring little for their plight. The wealthy were expected to give lavish gifts to curry favor with the Sultan and his officials, a system that perpetuated inequality. Those who fell out of favor could find their lands and wealth confiscated, their families enslaved or even executed, a constant reminder of the capricious nature of power. Corruption was endemic, with bribes and patronage serving as the oil that greased the gears of imperial administration. Most subjects had little access to education or opportunity for true social mobility. Women and religious minorities, especially Christians and Jews, faced systemic discrimination. While tolerated to a degree, Christians and Jews had to pay special taxes, the jizya, and faced certain restrictions on their rights and freedoms. Many Christian boys from the Balkans were taken from their families in a brutal process called devshirme, blood tax, to serve as elite Janissary, soldiers or administrators, forced to convert to Islam, and often never seeing their families again. Chapter 4. A hard-scrabble existence. The daily grind of Ottoman life, despite the empire's incredible wealth, largely derived from trade and conquest, prosperity was far from equally shared. Glittering goods from the east, spices, silk, porcelain, gems passed through Ottoman lands, but the profits flowed overwhelmingly to the Sultan and Osmal mercantile class. For artisans and merchants, life was precarious. Strict guilds controlled who could produce and sell certain goods. STI fling free enterprise, the whims of the court, fluctuating prices, foreign competition, wars and natural disasters could spell ruin. The lifeblood of the Ottoman economy was agriculture, but for the peasants who toiled in the fields, hunger and hardship were constant companions. Most were little more than serfs, bound to the land and to the feudal-like estates of Ottoman officials and cavalry soldiers called Sipahiz and Tima are. Adding to their burden were the Saline, oppressive, irregular taxes Levi ed to pay for military campaigns in times of crisis. Extra crops and livestock might be confiscated to provision the army, leaving little for peasant families. The Ottoman war machine was fearsome to behold, but no less fearsome was the life of those conscripted to serve in it. Soldiers were expected to show unquestioning loyalty and brutal discipline. Training was harsh, as were conditions on campaign. Marching 4 months into enemy territory, Ottoman armies faced extremes of heat and cold, drought and downpour. Disease was rampant in crowded military camps. Siege warfare could drag on for months, with soldiers slowly starving or succumbing to dysentery and typhus. Those unlucky enough to garrison frontier forts and outposts faced a life of isolation, deprivation, and the constant threat of bandit raids and enemy assaults. Many men never returned from the distant battlefields of Persia, the Caucasus, and Europe, but there was no shortage of soldiers for the Sultan's force. Prisoners of war and enslaved people were pressed into service. Tribesmen from the empire, hinterlands, were offered land grants in exchange for military service. And of course, there were the Janissaries, Christian captives and conscripts, transformed into elite warriors, utterly loyal to the Sultan. Chapter 5. Whispers from the Harem and the Frontier. Power, peril, and intrigue. Throughout the empire, the institution of slavery was deeply entrenched and widespread. People were routinely enslaved through conquest, kidnapping, and debt. Slaves toiled in fields and households, served in the army and navy, and of course, populated the imperial harem. For the Sultan's hundreds of concubines. Life was a gilded cage of luxury, intrigue, and captivity, torn from their homelands in Europe, Africa, and the Caucasus. These women often schemed and seduced to win status and influence. Bearing a son, a potential heir to the throne, was their sure saint route to security and power. But harem life was rife with perils. Concubines that fell out of favor could be married off to minor officials or even executed. There were always new rivals to fend off, as the Sultan's mother, the powerful, valid Sultan, fought to safeguard her own influence at court. One of the most famous and able figures in the harem was Roxol Anna, a Ukrainian slave girl who rose to become the beloved wife and most trusted advisor of Suleiman the Magnificent. Born to an Orthodox priest, she was captured by crime and tatters and sold into the Ottoman court. Her beauty, sharp wit, and ambition soon caught Suleiman's eye, and she broke centuries of tradition by becoming his legal wife. As Hrem's power grew, she ruthlessly maneuvered to secure the throne for her own son, Selim, over the Sultan's other heirs. Her schemes famously led to the downfall and execution of the Grand Vizier Ibrahim Pasha, Suleiman's childhood friend and most trusted advisor, and even Suleiman, oldest son and heir apparent, Mustafa, who was straying, led to death on his father's orders, allegedly at Haram's instigation. Hrem's story is just one example of the complex power dynamics and brutal realities that played out within the walls of the Ottoman harem and indeed across the entire empire. The frontier regions, for instance, like the Balkans, were racked by constant raids, massacres, and scorched earth tactics by both Ottoman and European forces. marauding band is known as Hajj. Ducks and cocks terrorized villages. Captured towns might be plundered, their populations enslaved, or for Bly converted. This climate of violence and instability, only few lead simmering resentments among the Sultan as Christian subjects in Greece, Serbia, and Bulgaria, the Greek Orthodox and Slav versus Chafed under the Ottoman yoke and dreamed of independence. 4 figures, like Sokollu Mustafa Pasha, the Bayor governor of Buda in Hungary in the 1660s. Life on the frontier was a potent mix of ambition, greed, violence, and political intrigue. A Bosnian Muslim from a Serb family, Mustafa Pasha was known for his ruthless methods of keeping order and extracting revenue. He seized attractive Hungarian women and boys for his pleasure, a practice that earned him the hat red of the local population. Yet, he was also a canny diplomat, forging alliances and maintaining peace. His life exemplifies the brutal yet strategic reality of governing the empire. Far-flung, restive frontiers. Chapter 6. The Sultan at Sea. Life on the Ottoman waves. As the Ottoman Empire's power and influence spread across the Mediterranean and North Africa and the Middle East in the 16th century, the Sultan's Navy played an increasingly vital role. Life at sea for Ottoman sailors was full of hardships and dangers. The imperial fleet, while formidable, was still at the mercy of the unpredictable Mediterranean weather. Warships were often caught in devastating storms, with entire crews lost to the wind and waves. Disease was another constant threat in the cramped, damp, and unsanitary conditions on board ships. Epidemics could rage through a vessel, decimating its crew. When not battling the elements, Ottoman sailors faced the ever-present risks of naval warfare. Conflicts with the navies of Christian European powers like Spain, Venice, and the Knights of Malta were frequent, resulting in ferocious cannon battles and bloody deck-to-deck fighting for those unfortunate enough to be captured by the enemy. A grim fate awaited. Slavery, torture, or summary execution were commonplace. The life of the galley slave, chained to an oar and merciless sly driven by the crack of the overseer's whip, was especially brutal, a literal hell on earth. Even in times of relative peace, an Ottoman sailor slot was not an easy one. Piracy was rampant on the high seas, and Ottoman shipping was often the target of daring raids by the Barbary, corsairs, and other brigands. These swift and nimble pirate ships would swoop in on merchant vessels, overwhelming them with cannon, fire, and boarding parties seizing cargo, ships, and crews to be ransomed or sold into slavery. For those sailors manning the coasts and ports of the empire, life was somewhat more stable, but no less challenging. The Ottoman Navy was responsible for defending the empire's long Mediterranean and Red Sea coastlines, as well as strategic choke points like the Dardanelles and Bosphorus Straits. This required a network of coastal fortifications, naval bases, and frontier garrisons that were often situated in remote and inhospitable locales. In addition to naval battles and coastal defense, the Ottoman fleet was key to maintaining the empire's commercial lifelines. Merchant ships laden with valuable goods like silks, spices, coffee, and ceramics plied the maritime trade routes between Ottoman ports, often escorted by naval ships to ward off piracy. One of the most famous and able Ottoman admirals was Hayreddin Barbarossa, a legendary Barbary corsair who rose to become Admiral-in-Chief of the Ottoman Navy under Suleiman the Magnificent in the 16th century. Born on the Greek island of Lesbos to a Turkish father and Greek Christian mother, Barbarossa and his brothers took up piracy as young men, quickly earning a fearsome reputation for their skill and daring. In 1516, Barbarossa seized Algiers and placed his pirate kingdom under Ottoman suzerainty, providing him with money, men, and ships to continue his raids against Christian shipping. Impressed by Barbarossa's audacity and success, Suleiman appointed him Admiral and Chief of the Ottoman Navy in 1533. Under Barbarossa's leadership, the Ottoman fleet became the dominant maritime power in the Mediterranean. His most famous victory came at the Battle of Preveza in 1538, where he decisively defeated a larger Allied Christian fleet, solidifying Ottoman naval supremacy and sending shockwaves throughout Europe. Barbarossa's skill, charisma, and ruthless efficiency made him a hero among his men and a dreaded foe to the Christian powers. The Ottoman Navy reached its zenith under Suleiman, but this glory was relatively short-lived. The devastating defeat at the Battle of Lepanto in 1571 marked the beginning of a long, slow decline in Ottoman naval power. The empire's best sailors and shipwrights were gradually lost through attrition, with few replacements of equal quality. Corruption and nepotism saw less able officers promoted, and the Ottoman shipyards, once the envy of the Mediterranean, struggled to keep pace with European advancements. By the 18th century, the Ottoman Navy was a shadow of its former self, outclassed and outgunned by its European rivals. It suffered a series of humiliating defeats, culminating in the disastrous Battle of Me in 1770 against the Russians. The final chapter came during World War I, when the empire sided with the Central Powers. Though Ottoman coastal artillery inflicted heavy losses on Allied warships during the Gallipoli campaign, the fleet itself saw little action. Bottled up in port with the empire's defeat and dissolution after World War I, its once mighty navy ceased to exist. Chapter 7. The Empire's Slow Twilight. Decay and dissolution. The Ottoman Empire, for all its might and resilience, eventually succumbed to the relentless march of time and the pressures of a rapidly changing world. By the 19th century, the Ottoman state was but a shadow of its former glory, racked by mounting debt to European powers, endemic corruption, and astering of largely incompetent sultans. The empire was often dubbed the sick man of Europe. Separatist revolts brewed in the provinces, particularly in the Balkans, where Christian subjects fed under Ottoman rule and dreamed of independence. The centuries-old millet system, which had granted religious minorities a degree of self-governance, began to break down under the strain of rising nationalism. Massacres of Christian minorities, like the Bulgarians and Armenians, shocked the conscience of Europe and invited further foreign intervention. Efforts at modernization and reform, though ambitious, often proved too little, too late, or only seemed to accelerate the empire's SDI's integration. The outbreak of World War I and the Ottoman Empire's fateful decision to align with the Central Powers ultimately led its tragic fate. After 4 long and devastating years of bloodshed, the war ended in total defeat for the Ottomans. the once mighty Sultanate was soon carved up by the victorious Allies, its vast territory stripped away. The Turkish-speaking rump was reconstituted as the Republic of Turkey in 1923, bringing a definitive end to over 600 years of Ottoman rule. The legacy of the Ottoman Empire, for better or worse, continues to shape the Middle East, North Africa, and Southeastern Europe to this day. Its impact on the Islamic world is hard to overstate, with centuries as the seat of the Caliphate and the protector of the holy cities. The Ottoman story is in many ways a cautionary tale of the immense challenges and human toll of sustaining a diverse, far-flung empire across tumultuous swath of the earth. For the millions of nameless subjects who eked out in existence in its villages and towns, life under the Ottoman Crescent was often defined by hardship, oppression, and near constant upheaval. Yet even in the face of tremendous adversity, the peoples of the Ottoman realms built vibrant cultures and lifeways that endured for centuries. Theirs is a story of resilience, as much as subjugation, a quiet reminder of the human capacity to carve out meaning and even beauty in even the most trying of historical eras. As we close our eyes and drift off to slumber, those old ghosts come whispering back to us. Sultans and slaves, conquerors and concubines, all those long ago lives ground up in the mills of empire, their struggles and sorrows float us across the ages. A blood-flecked Mia SMA from that vanished epoch of silks and scimitars. Perhaps, as we sink into sleep, we might spare them a thought, the faceless, forgotten subjects whose pain paid for the palaces and pomp, the true price of all that power and magnificence, tallied in toil and torment. Not a comforting thought, perhaps, but an instructive one, for in the rise and ruin of the Ottoman realm, we might just catch a glimpse of the human condition in all its splendor. And with that, our journey through the Ottoman world must come to a gentle end for now. I hope this quiet voyage into the past has proven as fascinating as it is restful. Until next time, I wish you the most pleasant of dreams. This is Boring History for Sleep, signing off. Good night.